Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are dissecting a decision that honestly still echoes through Indian history. It's about a single choice made by one man that stopped a nationwide revolution dead in its tracks.
So picture this. It's 1922. The non-cooperation movement is at its absolute peak. The energy is electric. And then, poof, it's over. In an instant. And the reason why? A violent incident in some remote village. So how did this happen? And why, 100 years later, are people still arguing about it? Let's get into it. Okay, so to really get why this was such a massive shock, you first have to feel the momentum, the energy that was building. By late 1921, India was just buzzing with anticipation. I mean, for the very first time, it really felt like the British Empire was on the ropes. So as this movement started gaining more and more steam, the British government decided to crack down hard. They started outlawing these nationalist volunteer groups and began arresting key leaders, people like C.R. Doss. But you know what? That just fanned the flames. Pretty soon, over 30,000 people were in prison. And this all led to this really dramatic showdown. On February 1st, Gandhi lays it all on the line. He issues an ultimatum to the viceroy. Either you release the prisoners or you're gonna face the consequences. And the consequence he was threatening? Oh, it was huge. Mass civil disobedience. We're talking about a nationwide campaign of nonviolent resistance, and it was all set to kick off with a no-tax movement in a district called Bardoli. The Indian National Congress had basically given Gandhi sole authority, the final say, so the entire country was just holding its breath, waiting for him to give the signal. But here's the thing. That signal from Bardoli, it never came. Because hundreds of miles away, in this little town called Chowri Chowra, a local protest was about to spiral completely out of control, and it would derail the entire national movement. So what happened was this tragic, really rapid escalation. You had a procession of volunteers from both the Congress and the Khilafat movement that was in alliance with Indian Muslims, and they clashed with the local police. Things got heated, the police opened fire on the crowd, and, well, that crowd turned into an enraged mob. The police tried to retreat back to their station, but it was too late. The mob surrounded the building and set it on fire. And in all that chaos, in the fire and the smoke, 22 policemen were killed. Some were even brutally murdered as they tried to escape the flames. It was just a horrific act of violence. And crucially, it was a complete and total betrayal of the movement's core principle of nonviolence, of ahimsa. So when word of this finally reached Gandhi, his response was immediate. And it was absolute. There was zero hesitation, no negotiation. And for his followers, who were literally on the brink of this final massive push against the British, his decision was nothing short of stunning. And just like that, only 1 week after the Chowri Chowra incident, it was official. The Congress Working Committee, pushed by Gandhi, called the whole thing off. The largest anti-colonial uprising the British Empire had ever faced was just over. A sudden, shocking end. You can imagine their reaction. Gandhi's own inner circle was just in a state of disbelief and, frankly, fury. Leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru and C.R. Doss, who were in jail at the time, were completely floored. And this quote here, it just perfectly captures that frustration. Why should the whole country have to pay the price for what some people did in a faraway village? It's a fantastic question, and one people are still asking today. All right, so this brings us to the absolute heart of the matter. Was this a catastrophic failure of leadership, a betrayal of the millions of people who had sacrificed so much? Or was it something else entirely? Maybe a calculated, even brilliant strategic move? So here you have the two competing narratives, right? On one side, you have the critics. They say Gandhi basically lost his nerve, that he got scared the movement was becoming too radical and was going to threaten the wealthy Indian elite. But on the other side, his supporters argue that no, this was a brilliant tactical retreat designed to save the entire movement from being completely crushed by the British. Okay, let's dig into that first idea, the betrayal theory. The argument here is that Gandhi's whole commitment to nonviolence was maybe just a cover for his real fear, which was a full-blown social revolution that would threaten the wealthy elites who were, let's be honest, funding the Congress Party. And for these critics, there's a smoking gun. See, the very same resolution that officially stopped the national struggle also included a clause ordering peasants to pay their taxes and their rents to landlords. For them, this was proof positive that Gandhi was more worried about protecting the rich than he was about fighting for independence. But of course, there's a powerful counter-argument, one that reframes the whole thing not as fear, but as a really shrewd political calculation. The idea is that Gandhi knew that any violence, anywhere, would give the British the perfect excuse they were looking for to just crush the movement with overwhelming force, not just in Chauri Chaura, but in Bardoli and all across the country. Plus, some argue the movement's energy was already starting to fade in some places, so a retreat was actually a smart move to regroup. And that clause about paying rent, supporters say that was just restating existing Congress policy. It wasn't some new secret deal to protect landlords. So, from this point of view, Gandhi was facing a really stark choice: retreat with honor or stay the course and watch the entire movement get brutally crushed by the government. He chose to preserve his forces so they could fight another day. So, all this brings us to the big final question, doesn't it? Gandhi had promised Swaraj, independence, within a year. Well, the year was up, and now the movement was called off. So when you look back, was the whole thing just a failure? Well, not even close. In fact, it was the exact opposite. The non-cooperation movement was a massive turning point in Indian history. It literally transformed Indian politics forever. For the first time, the Indian National Congress proved that it wasn't just some club for the elite. It had the backing of millions of ordinary people. It ignited this incredible national consciousness, and it achieved this amazing level of Hindi-Muslim unity, bringing people together from the biggest cities to the tiniest villages. In this quote from Gandhi, written just a few days after he called everything off, it just perfectly captures his long-term vision. For him, this was never the end. It was one battle, sure, but the war was far from over. And in the years that followed, this painful choice to retreat and regroup is what allowed the movement to rebuild its nonviolent discipline. It set the stage for even bigger, more successful campaigns later on. And so it leaves us right back where we started, with that central question. Was the withdrawal a moment of weakness that cost India dearly? Or was it the necessary, tough, strategic call of a leader who was playing the long game? That right there is the puzzle of Chauri Chaura.